As noted in the beginning of Mass, today is a feast day. We celebrate the Apostle James, one of the 12, and the readings that the Church chooses today, and oftentimes for the feast for apostles, that has to do with suffering, has to do with trials. And Paul, in the second letter of Corinthians here, the passage that the church has for James, Paul gives his primary motivation on why he continues to endure the hardships that he endures. And he says this, I think it was like the last verse here. Everything indeed is for you. Everything is indeed is for you, so that the grace bestowed in abundance on more and more people may cause the thanksgiving to overflow for the glory of God. He goes through all these things of driven down or struck down, perplexed, persecuted, afflicted in every way. Everything indeed is for you, he says. So these people that he's writing, these people that he's lived with in the community, and also those that he doesn't even see, so that more and more people might have the grace of God bestowed upon them to be saved, and then that glorifies God all the more. The question, I think, for me, that I found myself asking myself, and also just thinking about this parish and thinking about just the Catholic Church in general today in the 21st century, but then smaller scale Notre Dame, or maybe smaller scale the church in the U.S., and then here on Norfolk and Chicago, and then me myself. What's my level of zeal for souls? What's the level for my zeal of souls? To what extent am I like Paul? I was reading yesterday some church encyclicals on mission, and one of them, John Paul II's Redemptoris Missio, and I just want to leave us with this couple lines that he said as it relates to zeal for souls. The missionary, so that's you and me, this is the way the church looks at it. The missionary is urged on by zeal for souls, a zeal inspired by Christ's own charity. So zeal for souls isn't something that we just try to fabricate. Zeal from souls comes from being united with Christ. It comes from our own relationship with him. So the missionary is urged on by zeal for souls, a zeal inspired by Christ's own charity, which takes the form of concern. It takes the form of tenderness. It takes the form of compassion, of openness, availability, and interest in people's problems. Jesus' love is very deep, he goes on to say. He who knew what was in man loved everyone by offering them redemption and suffered when it was rejected. This is the same suffering that Paul's talking about here. It's the same suffering that he tells sons of Zebedee in our gospel. For what reason? For the salvation of souls. What's my zeal for souls? What's our zeal for souls? It takes a form of great concern. What's my level of concern? It takes the form of tenderness. What's my level of tenderness when I'm speaking with somebody and they're sharing maybe their problems? Do I see an avenue to love on them and to love on them with the charity of Christ? It takes the form of compassion. What's my level of compassion? It takes the form of openness. It takes the form of availability and an interest in people's problems. What's my openness? What's my availability and interest in people's problems? More and more so, what it is we're more interested in just our problems and my interests. It's contrary to the way of the apostles. It's contrary to the way that Christ gave the mandate to the church, which is our mandate. And so on this day that we celebrate the Apostle James, is this day that we hear from 2 Corinthians, and Paul says, here's all the reasons why I continue to endure all the sufferings that I do. It's for your sake, he says, so that more and more and more and more people might have the grace of God bestowed upon them.